Quad Cortex has only been on the market for a few years, but in the short time that it has existed, I think it has secured its place in the conversation with the top 4 or 5 hardware modelers on the market. Now, for you early adopters, that may have meant going through some of the growing pains as certain features that were promised maybe didn't come to fruition as quickly as you had hoped that they would. But fast forward deep into 2024, a lot of that has been addressed. So in terms of a first-time user, my first impression begins now. Hey there, I'm Dan, the self-proclaimed Lonely Rocker. Thank you so much for joining me today. So this is kind of a special episode, as it is episode number 300 of Lonely Rocker. And to celebrate, we're going to take a look at the Quad Cortex, which was provided by Sweetwater. Now, that's just a coincidence. Just kind of happened that way, but I do want to thank Sweetwater for providing the Quad Cortex and help making this video happen. I've been really wanting to get one in the studio, and it's finally here. So if you want any more information about that, there is a Sweetwater link in the description. That's also an affiliate link, but I want to earn that click first. So let's get into the video. So I'm a studio guy. I don't play live. So my perspective of the Quad Cortex is going to come from someone who works here in a studio. Now, I love real amps, and that's always part of the conversation. So integration with my current workflow, which includes real amps, is always important when I evaluate a modeler. There's certain routing features and things that these modelers do have. Now, my perspective are with devices. I have a Fractal FM9 and a Line 6 Helix. This is not a comparison video, but this is sort of where my perspective comes from. So I want to take you through sort of the main features that I would use the Quad Cortex for and see how that looks over 30 days and give you sort of my feeling about it as a first-time user, in the hopes if you are in the market for a Quad Cortex, it'll give you a little bit perspective and help you decide if this is the right model for you. All right, let's get into the video. So I know the first thing people are always going to ask is, how does it sound? But I think there's enough videos out there that's really documented how good the Quad Cortex sounds. And I think modern day modelers have just become so good. At least in the context of a mix, I don't think you can really tell the difference between a good modeler and a real amplifier. Now, the whole experience, that's a different conversation. So I don't want to talk too much about tones today. We're going to share a little bit so you will hear some things. But really for me, it's about the experience of using the device. And the first thing that's really the most important when you're using a new device is how easy is it to use? I know we're all impatient as guitar players. We want to get in and just start using it. And if it becomes a little too complicated out of the box, then sort of we lose interest quickly. So I want to take a look at the interface and the different ways you can manipulate the device and how that felt sort of out of the box. Neural DSP clearly did their homework when designing the Quad Cortex. The user interface feels familiar, but interactions between the interface and the device just feel very logical. Features on the touchscreen are well coordinated with the physical components on the device. I love how the parameters of each block are color coordinated with the switches that also double as dials. It makes building presets so easy. Basic routing options are really clearly laid out, and with the addition of the desktop app, it integrates nicely with a desktop workflow for recording or if you monitor your Quad Cortex through your computer. Now, I admittedly resisted modelers for a long time because I love real amplifiers, but the day I discovered that these are great devices in the studio because you can utilize their signal routing capabilities. That means I can bring in real amplifiers, run them through a signal chain in here, take advantage of all the effects, hosting cab IRs and things like that. I'd like to do ReAmping and things like that. So I wanted to take a look at the Quad Cortex and see how well it functions in that capacity. Recording tube amps direct is a major part of my studio, and adapting this workflow with the Quad Cortex was so painfully easy. This is definitely an area I'll be diving deeper into, so make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss that. I run my tube amps through a load box and then send the signal through a modeler that is configured as my system's audio interface to get it into my DAW. Utilizing an effects loop block, I was easily able to route my Evo Amps TM50 through one of the effects loops on the back of the Quad Cortex, and then I added a cab block and other effects inside the Quad Cortex to complete my signal chain. For ReAmping, I was able to use the same preset, but I changed input 1 to USB 5 and then sent the DI'd guitar track in my project out via output 5, and it worked like a charm the first time. I'm not here to compare devices in this video, but this took me days to figure out on another modeler. But maybe that was just my own stupidity. However, the Quad Cortex is clearly a great device for recording real amps and reamping. Now, a feature that I was really excited about is amp captures. Now, that's something I've done with software platforms, but I've never had a device that captured right from the device itself. Now, the two modelers, or the main modelers that I have here, don't have capturing features, so really interested to see how easy that was and how accurate it was capturing real amplifiers directly through the Quad Cortex. I found the capture process on the Quad Cortex really simple, providing you have some understanding on how to record a tube amp and you have the equipment that you need. I like how the capture module gives you the option to capture an amp through a cabinet or through a load box, as I do in my studio. It walks you through the connection process and lets you preview your amp through a cab IR if you're capturing a raw amp. For my first capture, I chose my Evo Amps TM50, an amazing 50-watt hand-wire tube amp that I have featured on my channel numerous times. I'll make this and future captures available on my Patreon, link in the description. I chose channel 2 for a high-gain tone, but nothing too over the top. The process was surprisingly quick. Let's compare the capture with the real amp. Now, technically, the Neural DSP Quad Cortex is the third major modeler here in the studio. I'm talking about the full-size devices. I've got some budget ones, but so perhaps I'm getting a little bit more familiar with the process. So maybe it's getting a little bit easier each and every time. But there's a certain comfort using the Quad Cortex. I found it just makes a lot of sense. Like I said, the interface is a little bit familiar, perhaps influenced by previous devices, but they've sort of taken that and run with it. And it really was a very simple device to adapt to. I mean, I was making presets pretty simply right out of the box with minimal research. I did go online to look for a couple of things, but I found that I wasn't spending a lot of time doing that. And by contrast, and again, this is not a comparison video, but the Fractal FM9 and Fractal products in general tend to be a little bit more, people use the word complicated. They're just extremely deep. I mean, in terms of tweaking, there's a lot of sort of deeper dive in terms of tweakability, whereas something like this would be more similar to something like a Helix. But take that with a touch screen, a little more tactile control. It's got its own look and feel. And I think the integration between the onboard firmware and the hardware is great integration, and it's really intuitive. So anything that I need to do, I could find it pretty easily, adjusting levels in and out. It was just, I think, a really simple thing to do. I didn't have a lot of trouble. Everything you saw was pretty much first kick at the can. It's not like I practiced for 2 weeks and then gave you the best of. I'm just diving into these things to see how it works. So I think they've really built a great device here. The fact that some of those issues, like I said, having the desktop application in a studio context, it's just nice to have it. It's extremely convenient. You don't have to jump over to the device itself. But the fact that you have the touchscreen and a lot of tactile control with the switches and dials here makes it probably one of the easier modelers to use right on the device itself. and the capture feature, which of course is not necessarily for everyone, but if you are like me and you're in the amplifier world, well, you can capture some of your favorite presets or favorite amp settings, I should say, and make them easily available to you on your Quad Cortex. So if you're gigging, you can bring your favorite amp with you, and there's not a lot of extra hardware needed to accomplish that. So that's a big plus for that. So really, I'm just scratching the surface here. I am definitely going to take deeper dives into the Quad Cortex as I start to use it more. A lot of videos are going to be coming out from this channel. Certainly, if there's anything that you want to see, any questions at all, well, I want to hear from you. That's what the comment section is for. I'm new to the Quad Cortex community in Neural DSP, and I haven't even touched on their plugins because I actually have some of their plugins too. So we're going to get into all of that. But I want to thank Sweetwater once again for providing the Quad Cortex. I really appreciate that. If you are interested in the Quad Cortex or any other products that Sweetwater has to offer, there is a link in the description. And if I have earned it, that is an affiliate link. I'd appreciate the support here on the channel. Every little bit helps. Anyways, if you did enjoy this video, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell. And while you're down there, well, I've had experiences with other modelers too, and what that first month or two look like, where I'm going to pop a video right here if you want to check it out. And remember, you don't need a band to rock and roll. I'll catch you in the next one.